Stephen Hawking is a name synonymous with groundbreaking discoveries in the realm of physics and cosmology, yet the man behind these extraordinary achievements had a life rich with fascinating stories, personal struggles, and unyielding determination. This is the story of the unknown side of Stephen Hawking, a man who defied the odds, not just as a scientist, but as a human being. Early life, a curious mind. Stephen Hawking was born on January 8, 1942, in Oxford, England, exactly 300 years after the death of the legendary astronomer Galileo Galilei. While some might consider this a sign of predestination, Hawking himself wasn't one to believe in such notions. His parents, Isabel Eileen Hawking and Frank Hawking, were both well-educated individuals. Isabel had earned her way to the University of Oxford at a time when it was rare for women to attain higher education. She studied economics, philosophy, and politics, eventually working as a medical research secretary. Frank, on the other hand, also attended Oxford, where he studied medicine, later specializing in tropical diseases. His research took the family to London, but when Isabel became pregnant with Stephen, she left the city for the safer environment of Oxford, as London was still reeling from the aftermath of the Blitz in 1941. After Stephen's birth, two sisters followed, Philippa and Mary, as well as an adopted brother, Edward. The Hawking family was an unconventional one, with eccentric habits that included dining in silence while each member read a book. They lived in a large, somewhat chaotic house, kept bees in the basement, and traveled around in an old London taxi. Education was of utmost importance in the Hawking household, and this was evident in the way they nurtured Stephen's growing curiosity about the world around him. Stephen began his education at the Byron House School in Highgate, a suburb of London. It was a progressive school, and according to Hawking, the teachers there didn't believe in drilling knowledge into their students. He would later blame this approach for his inability to read until he was 8 years old. However, by the time he was 8, the family had moved to St. Albans, Hertfordshire, where his father had become the head of the Department of Parasitology at the National Institute for Medical Research. Frank Hawking had hopes that his son would follow in his footsteps and pursue a career in medicine. But young Stephen had already set his sights on the stars, spending much of his time looking up at the sky and pondering the mysteries of the universe. A love for the cosmos. At St. Albans School, Stephen encountered an inspirational teacher named Dikran Tata, who played a crucial role in shaping his future. Tata introduced Stephen to the world of mathematics, which he described as the blueprint of the universe. Together, they built Stephen's first computer from old clock parts and a telephone switchboard. Hawking would later say, "Behind every exceptional person, there is an exceptional teacher," a sentiment that reflected the profound impact Tata had on his life. Initially, Stephen wanted to study mathematics at university, but his father was concerned about the limited job prospects for math graduates. Eventually, Stephen won a scholarship to study physics at the University of Oxford. However, his time at Oxford was not without its challenges. For the first 18 months, he found the coursework boring and too easy, leading him to become disengaged. He was also lonely and struggled to make friends. This changed when he decided to join his college's boat club. His loud voice and light weight made him the perfect coxswain, the person responsible for steering the boat. A fellow boatman remarked that Stephen often seemed like he had his head in the stars, working out mathematical formulae, even while rowing. Despite his newfound interest in rowing, Stephen didn't devote much time to his studies. He admitted to spending only an hour a day on average working during his entire time at Oxford. This lack of effort made exams difficult, and he almost didn't secure a first-class degree, which was necessary for admission to the University of Cambridge for postgraduate studies. His final results were on the border between first and second-class honors, so he had to take an oral exam. When asked about his future plans, he cheekily responded, "If you award me a first, I will go to Cambridge. If I receive a second, I shall stay in Oxford, so I expect you will give me a first." The examiners did indeed award him a first-class degree, allowing him to begin his graduate studies at Cambridge in 1962. The early struggles at Cambridge. At Cambridge, Stephen decided to focus on cosmology, the study of the universe as a whole. However, he was initially disappointed to find that he had been assigned physicist Dennis Sciama as his supervisor, rather than the more famous astronomer Fred Hoyle. This disappointment would later prove to be a blessing in disguise. While Hoyle was rarely available to his students, Sciama was always eager to engage in discussions, helping to stimulate Stephen's own scientific vision. Sciama also encouraged Stephen to explore the Big Bang Theory, which posits that the universe had a beginning when it exploded with unimaginable force. Fred Hoyle, who was not a fan of this theory, had actually coined the term Big Bang to mock it. But under Sciama's guidance, Stephen was free to investigate the beginnings of time. Before he could delve deeply into his research, however, Stephen began to experience troubling symptoms. He had always been somewhat clumsy, but during his time at Oxford, this clumsiness seemed to worsen. After falling down a flight of stairs, a doctor suggested he lay off the beer, but the symptoms persisted. In 1963, at the age of 21, Stephen was diagnosed with a motor neuron disease called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. The condition gradually paralyzes the body as the brain loses its ability to control the muscles. Doctors gave Stephen only 2 years to live, and this prognosis plunged him into a deep depression. He felt that his life was over and saw little point in continuing his studies, finding hope in the darkness. Despite the grim diagnosis, the disease progressed more slowly than the doctors had anticipated. With the encouragement of his supervisor, Dennis Sciama, Stephen returned to his research with renewed vigor. This period marked the beginning of what would become some of his most groundbreaking work, particularly in the study of black holes, those mysterious, perfectly circular regions of space that form when a star collapses at the end of its life cycle. Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity had predicted the existence of black holes, explaining how gravity distorts space-time. The gravitational pull of a black hole is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape it. This intense gravitational force also warps the surrounding space, much like a carnival mirror distorts the reflection of a person standing before it. Although Einstein's equations suggested the possibility of black holes, even he wasn't entirely convinced that these cosmic monsters actually existed. The work of British mathematician Sir Roger Penrose later proved that general relativity does indeed lead to the formation of black holes, a discovery that would earn Penrose the Nobel Prize in 2020. But it was Stephen Hawking who became obsessed with black holes, making a number of important discoveries that would forever change our understanding of the universe. One of Hawking's most famous contributions to science was his discovery that black holes are not entirely black. In fact, they emit a faint glow just outside the event horizon, the boundary between normal space and the space affected by the black hole's gravity. This radiation, now known as Hawking radiation, would, in theory, cause the black hole to gradually evaporate over time. Hawking's work in this area was so revolutionary that it opened up new avenues of research in both physics and cosmology. Hawking also had a playful side, as evidenced by his penchant for making bets with his fellow physicists. One of the most famous of these bets involved the fate of information that falls into a black hole. Hawking and physicist Kip Thorne bet that this information would be lost forever, while physicist John Preskill argued that it could be recovered through the radiation emitted by the black hole. Although this puzzle remains unresolved to this day, Hawking eventually conceded the bet and gave Preskill an encyclopedia of his choice, On Baseball: A Life of Love and Loss. While Stephen Hawking was busy exploring the mysteries of the universe, his personal life was undergoing significant changes. Around the time of his ALS diagnosis, he met Jane Wilde, a fellow student from his hometown of St. Albans. Stephen was studying physics at Cambridge, while Jane was an English student at the University of London. Despite the challenges posed by his illness, Jane gave Stephen something to live for. They were married in 1965, believing that they didn't have much time together. In the end, they would be married for 30 years and have 3 children, Robert, Lucy, and Timothy. Jane's unwavering support was a crucial factor in Stephen's ability to continue his work despite the physical toll of ALS. She became his caregiver, tending to his every need, feeding him, dressing him, and even helping him with his frequent hospital visits. However, their marriage was not without its difficulties. Jane later remarked that their relationship was strained not just by Stephen's illness, but also by his dedication to his work. The truth was, there were 4 partners in our marriage, she said. Stephen and me, motor neuron disease and physics.